Yeah, so as a front-end developer, I have no exposure to database. Okay, it's not like haven't done backend and stuff, but I have very like low experience in database. Like I have done some database stuff in college, like select some and inserting something. Other than that, I have no experience. So to start with it, can you like define what is database?
I think in simplest form, that's what database is. The one you have explained. It's like just to put something that you write and put something that you read. In the backend, what it offers is it offers something called as ACID, which is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and transactional or durability. Sorry. So it's primarily governs that simple concept is once you put some databases and you committed it, is there to be present every time. So even if it's not lost or something, and it is every time it will give you the same committed data back. So it help you have a consistent state across databases. And for the end user, you don't have to bother about it. A simple example is if you have 10 users logging to databases, 5 might be doing reads, 5 might be doing writes. 5 might be doing writes to the same table. Couple of them might be doing update on the same row at the same time with the same column. But does the user need to handle it? No. The database have its own mechanism of locking stuff, releasing stuff. It does a lot of magic internally. So for you, it's in the simplest form as where you can store your transactional information in a table or entities, and you can retrieve with joining tables or multiple entities together.
Okay. So I guess he forgot to introduce our guest for the
I
so
think it's a best introduction because
so we have Deepak Mathur with here today. He is the founder of Data Cloud Case. It's a startup which focuses on migrating
yeah,
database to
yeah, yeah.
PostgreSQL. And we recently had a podcast with him where we talked about his journey from big companies to getting down to his own startup. And we are lucky to have you again
Yeah.
on the Live Exchange episode. So this
Thanks, sir.
episode will be just all about databases. Yes. And nothing scripted, all heart-to-heart conversations and
Yes.
to be more precise, all dumb questions of ours.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I always introduce myself as your database guy. So it's like you bring your database question. I'm happy to answer all of those.
Actually, we were longing to see some person who will guide us in database. Because we usually we have mentors who are like front-end developers, who are core front-end. Like, bro, if you want to do this kind of animation, use this library, do this, do that. For a backend also, we are like, you have Node.js last.
Yeah, yeah.
But for database, we are like, bro, ChatGPT would give us the answers or not. But now we are like, no, we have your DB guy who can guide us on everything on
Yeah,
databases.
that's like through your channel. I want to request to everyone. Like I also talk to a lot of freshers whenever I go to meet or community and all. Everyone want to be a full stack developer, backend, good DevOps, SRE, and all of those. But I've not seen any single person coming to me and saying that look, I want to be a DB or database. It's not their fault, but it's how we have a technology put forward. Right? I think we don't have good people talking good thing about database. People talk about internals of it, the implementation who does on C and all of those, but not on how best to use databases, right? So I think good we are doing that. So I'm happy about it.
I just want to share one of my experience, like right from the college. It's like uh, right from when we are in college, we are only taught about the front end technologies, back end technologies, and in the database aspect as well, things that are taught are just select, drop, delete, remove, truncate.
Correct.
That's what we are taught, and that is what I remember till now. And that is one aspect that is not actually covered, and in the market as well, there are a lot of things that are like no, these already existing cloud technologies will already take care of these. So there is no need to go for any external databases. Like where I work, it's like they have only a SQL database where they do select and to get and push the data. So that is one thing that should be covered at very large scale as well. Because in the meetups that I go, like the Dev Fest that I went, I had gone to the React India meetup. People usually had talked about all these front end technologies.
Correct.
In the dev fest as well, because I thought like no, dev fest should be all about front end, back end, and D. It's like back end is also not talked that much because people think like backend guy is like a nerd guy who would like have his hoodie up and sit on his computer with a cup of coffee and 2 hours of
It's yeah,
sleep.
yeah.
And I would think like if backend is like this, how would the DB guy be like? Because he has the control over like his, it's like the mother of the entire
Yeah,
ecosystem.
but it's like I can show you my struggle. Like whenever I want to showcase a demo of database, it's always to black terminal, and most of the front end guys don't like it. Like what it is showing in this terminal. But the point is, see, every technology has a role to play. I always feel it's a very good and see, when I started building stuff on databases, it was very important where you put logic. So in our phase, we used to get taught that you should put logic near to data, or there were two concepts, right? So either you take data to the logic or take logic towards the data, like vice versa. So in that way, initially the network speed were slow. There were lots of big monolith databases. There were no concept of containerization, pods or Kubernetes and all. So you have to put everything logic in a database itself. And that has its own challenges because once you put logic in databases, it becomes monolithical and you cannot scale at some point of time. Then folks started realizing and re-architecting. Then microservice came in, the different architecture came in. Then the whole API platform came in, and then the React and all of those libraries also got enhanced, right? So what I feel is that every technology has its own role to play, but whenever you say if you're a full stack or anything, you should have an equal understanding of all the parties, be it front end, be it back end, or the databases. Because whenever you take a technical decision, it's very hard to balance out where to put that logic, whether to put completely on DB or whether to put completely on React. Like for example, if I have to filter a forms over a 10 million rows, should I move 10 million rows to an application? That's a question you have to answer, right? So
Yeah.
in that case, you have to be well aware of all the parties, like whether should I filter it and then load it, or should I have some materialize, some view something, or then or should I do everything at a single go? My network speed is fast. You can do whatever choice you have, right? So the core thought I always want to give everyone is that respect all the technology that you have. At the same time, give advantage. When I say respect, basically have empathy about all the things that people are doing. You whatever you're doing in front end or back end or databases is value proposition, because all the three things coming together build a wonderful apps, right? It's not only one part. You cannot have app without a place to store database. And a data can be anything, right? So like if you talk about your mobile, every mobile apps use the most used database, which is SQLite. There's always something that is there as part of it. If you open an Excel, that itself is a database. People use Google Sheet. I've seen small business scale use Google Sheet as their database. They put entry over there manually updated, right? So it's basically about understanding how things works at the technology. Use whatever best you can, and then but at the same time, today's it's I understand today's youth is struggling with a lot of things to catch up, and I'll say not to do that. Choose one area which you are fond of. If it's back end, front end, good. Just go more depth around the intricacy of it, the functioning, and go to DOM or JavaScript level. If you're back end, go to your performance memory or API bottleneck or throttling, or try to understand what is happening. If your database guy, do that. So I'll say it doesn't matter if you don't love databases, but just have empathy on what are different parties involved. And whenever you make any database decision, just question it whether I'm doing it right or not. If you start questioning a decision, doesn't matter the technology, you'll start making a good decision at point of time, and then pivot and as so it doesn't matter if it's select, update or delete, but do it wisely. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Hari had a lot of questions. Like after the when you shot a podcast, Hari was like, I wanted to ask this question." I'm like, "Bro, this episode is only for you. So go ahead, ask your Yes. question. I'll just Yeah. shut my mouth." So no, it's not like that. I have doubts because I want to like learn database in much more deeper level, but I don't know anything. I know superficially. So to start with it, in college we have learned very basic things, and whenever I search for anything on Google or GPT, it will give a surface level definition or surface level roadmap. So to start with, what roadmap can you give to a beginner or any intermediate person?
So I'll primarily say what I used to do for learning, right? So I was actually an Oracle application database developer. So my job was to write a business logic in database. So in my first product, I built at that time electronic first transfer and credit card all in databases. So if I tell you I can make an API call from database, I can write a file, I can do HTTP call, I can do everything from databases. But the point is, should I do it? Now I realize I should not. But at that point of time, we used to do it, right? But the point is, if you want to learn databases, you have to understand what are the persona with which you will using it. If you're using it to extract data, I'll master my SQL. If I'm using it to put data, I'll master my DML, update, delete, and all of those. If I'm using it to put logic, I'll master my procedural language in databases. Like for example, in Postgres, you can write your procedural logic in Python, Java, R, or Rust, and put that in database as well, and use that from the DB. So there are different persona that you have to find what you're using for. So I think very first thing is to start with queries, because some of the things that I've done for a lot of customer in my experience is just to give them a good query. A single query can do 100 insert, 100 delete, 100 select at the same time. You can do all of those in a single query. So I think the very first thing I'll suggest that learn how best to extract the information, whether your extraction is following some standard best practices like filtering out, joining properly, and all of those. And whenever you write any business rule, try to have that business rule check in all the layers. Like for example, if I'm writing a business rule that some date should not be null, or for example, if an entry goes, something should not happen for this one, you have to put those business rule in databases in the constraint. So understand the constraint part of it, like what is the constraint in databases. Like some of the example, if I just want to give is that it's a very standard employee department table, right? An employee is part of department has an employee, so it's a one to many relation. It's a relation that you have a table for it. So whenever you join, you'll join with some standard tables and all, but all of those relation also have a constraint. We call it as a primary key constraint, foreign key constraint, so that you start learning all of those concepts as well. So I'll suggest don't go in like and try to just read about databases. Understand your persona of what you're doing with databases. If you're doing select or you are reading, do more emphasis on writing good queries, as I said. So that will help you out, and then gradually go in more internals and all, step by step. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. In simple way, you just solved my problem. So yeah, you okay. Listening to this, I understand my problem as basically understand what I have to do.
Yeah.
According to that, I have to decide what part of it I have to improve or plan.
Exactly.
Okay. So after that, I have a question. If I'm working with a team, I'm working in a startup right now. I'm in a front ending, but doing everything for learning purposes. So my question is, we are told to make architecture. Yeah. So while making or working with a database or starting with it, you have to make an architecture like how a database schema would look like. So how do you think like how should we make? If it is one table, it's very easy.
I think the very first thing is do mistake, do learn from it, pivot it. But whenever I used to design any databases, I used to think from a perspective of how I'll query it. I call it as an access pattern. So what is understanding how you want to fetch it, like how you want to retrieve it. At the same time, how the transaction or insert will happen, because that give you a perspective on how your design should be as well.
How easy it would be,
Or how easy it should be, and plus also in databases there's a concept called as anomalies. So what anomalies says is that, for example, I cannot insert in a table it if its parent does not exist. If there's a relation, like for example, if you have an employee and department, I cannot insert in employee if department does not exist. If there's no department, how you can get an employee in it? It's a business rule, right? And that is controlled by anomalies or relation in databases. Those are all business rules that you can control. So now once you understand your functionality and also the attributes that you have to store for them, you have to just put that into it. And then a very important decision is how you want to fetch it. So we call it as, like for example, if I'm searching an employer, do I search from name? Or if I'm searching a department, do I need to know all the employee in that department? If yes, how I'll join my department and employee? All of those questions, right? So there are lots of different questions you have to answer. One is your joining column, your access pattern fetching, and how basically those are related as part of your screen and all. So once you start doing it, you put those perspective into a design, and your first design might not be very like rightly put down. And in database, we have a term called as normalized forms. So there are one normalized form, two normalized form, three normalized forms. What it says that you avoid data redundancy. Like for example, if I have a single table where I have department and employee all in a single table. So imagine if I have department and employee in one table, if I need to add a new employee, will I be unnecessarily populating department column also, or I have to keep it null, right? Because both are in the same pre-joined table, right? So those all can create a redundant or might not question. So whenever I need to design something, I follow this principle that I need to understand how I'm querying it, how I'm storing it, and also normalized form understanding and anomalies. Those are some high level jargon, but if you can search for it, what is three normal form, what is anomalies in databases, you'll get a lot of insight. But as I first said, do mistake and learn from it. Then you'll remember that, yeah, this should be it.
Yeah, actually, the practice which we follow in our startup is like we first take a pen and paper, drawing architecture. Yeah. So according to you are saying that we have to think how easy we can query our data, right? Access our data. Okay. So if we can you explain that with an example, any simple example, like
So a simple example will like you talk about any pattern of like it can be order and order details as well. Like take anything. Like if you have a portal where it keep tracks of inventory, orders, and everything. So the first user action come from application. Then you send a request to your backend, or through backend it will come to databases. So you have to always understand what is the access pattern that is retrieving data. Is it order ID? It is product ID, product detail, or something like that, right? So based on that, you will retrieve it. So what I'll try to do is like I'll understand what are different noun in the system. Like for example, if it is employee department, those are two separate entities. I'll have those separately together. Like they should be separate and put together in the databases. And then if I'm joining them on a column, I'll define some relation on top of it. So I don't want to make it very complex for everyone to understand it. But what I'm just want to put forward is that start with two tables at first, join it and see if you're getting your result back with your architecture. In case you feel that there are some redundancy you're introducing or anomalies that can happen, break the tables into three, or do start doing that. Because in real picture I've seen a bad design also and good design, and things works for everyone. There's no good bad, it's all about your access pattern, and if you're comfortable maintaining it, it's fine.
So what's your learning pattern? Like if I talk about myself, if I want to learn something new, I usually go towards a YouTube video, like see how that thing is, like just to get like a basic, like a layman's approach to like this is how, like for example, when I made my GenAI's video, so I looked up onto YouTube on some IBM's videos and where they were explaining about what is GenAI and all those things. And then I went to some blogs and like these extensions called Daily Dev and all, because that's how I kind of learn new things. So what is your pattern? Like, do you prefer watching videos or do you prefer reading blogs?
See, I prefer the third one, which is trying it out, the hands-on one. So I always look for an exercise. Like for example, there are lots of exercise that you can do on databases as well. For example, Oracle has something called as live SQL, LIV SQL. It gives you a live SQL where you can get the dialect from SQL and try it on your databases. Postgres has PG exercise. There are lots of platforms that give you the database that are spin up for you. You can directly go and try it out. You can do on SQL lines. And there are lots of stuff that offers it, right? So for me, it's always being that if you do it hands-on, you understand the technology better. And nowadays I think if you put more time on learning from like basic concept and all, you have to spend a lot of time to learn things, and I think not everyone has that patience to do it. So I'll suggest follow any exercise that you see on databases or anything, right? So usually try to solve that first and then research during that time what happens. So my way is hands-on, take a break, read about it, come back, hands-on, break it, and whatever is an exercise, try to do one more than that.
Okay.
That usually help to remember to long run. And I'm a bit old school, but I don't watch videos somehow. I'm not a big fan of watching videos. I try to do hands-on and then read some blogs out, because I feel I cannot watch on 1x, or I need to have 1.5 or 2x of speed to consume that message. So I think everyone has their own paradigm to learn it, right? So, but I'll suggest doing hands-on is always a differentiation.
So one thing that I frequently hear is like when they are making or writing code in like the development server, and when is in the production server, they maintain, like they say, like there is a DB copy that they maintain. So what is exactly like, or is it like just they maintain like a certain DB for like the development and one for the production? So is it like the same database, or is it like something different, or for like production level there are some more key features or security parts added?
So in most of my experiences, like it's not like production, it's production like, because what happen is whenever we have a production data, we have a lots of compliance that need to be followed for the security of those data. So what we do is like we call some technology as data masking and all. So wherever your production, like for example, if you're storing your Aadhaar credit card detail on a production database, you don't want your developer to access to it, right? Because it's a security threat to your production data. So we mask it and do it. So, but in some formats, it should have the similar characteristic. What it means that if your production has 100 billion rows in a table, but your dev has 2 rows, that's it doesn't justify the impact that your alteration. Like simple example is that if you alter a table on dev, that alter might take 2 milliseconds. But if the same table has a different number of rows and on that, if you alter that in production, it will be a very different scenario for you. You will say it works in dev, but it's not working in production. So idea is that it's a production-like database. So where you say that whenever you put on dev, the similar kind of behavior and exposure you will have on production as well. But in most of my cases, it's not exactly same because of the sensitivity of the data that might have. Because I've seen some databases storing the password for user apps. Lots of secure stuff is also there. So you mask it and put it. We call it as a production like copy, but not exactly a production data. In some of characters, like if it is has 100 billion rows, it should have 80 or something in similar format shape for dev as well.
So one thing that I have in mind is like in the podcast you talked about like app stores and play stores, and it's just like from uh, not like a developer point of view, but it's like a layman point of view. It's like they also must be having the database from where they are fetching all the data. So what exactly would they like store it inside? Because there are, if we see that, if we talk about BGMI itself is I guess 3 GB the entire game. So how would they actually store that much of data? Because you have to fetch it once the user like puts up the game name, and it should fetch it to install. So I am really curious about how that thing actually works, because sometimes when we also work on, it's just a bit out of topic, but sometimes when we just work on databases and we store a video file which is of like 100 MB, to fetch it and to display, it's a different kind of an issue for us, because it's like you have to somehow get the data because it's a bit large. And
It's like primarily getting the right database for right data. What it means that till now we were talking about transactional database, but if I just talk about databases, it has a lot of like graph-based database, white column, distributed databases, key values, cache-based, which are Redis, and all. There are a lot of different types of databases. So whenever we talk about gaming and all, those are very different kind of database altogether. So they cannot use a traditional transactional technology to scale and store that many click stream, right? So some of the applications save each and every click stream that you do, actions that you do, and your points, your actions, your machineries, and all of those information need to be preserved, right? So the databases for every technology also change a lot. So you don't choose always a traditional transactional database. You might choose a white column, like different databases that are there. Like if I just name some cloud technology, like Dynamo is prominently used for a lot of gaming platform. We have spanners that are used, a lot of them. So there are different database technology that are evolving, which are built on the similar concepts, but that offer a better latency in terms of storing a large volume of data at a very short span of time, and at the same time retrieving it. Because if I give you a very simple example, like if you post something on LinkedIn, and if 120 people liked it, somehow one like is not saved in database. What's the impact of it? It's not a big impact, right?
Hmm.
It's not. So you can have a different kind of databases that can give you a lenient on consistency,
Hmm.
but you want performance,
Hmm.
right? So, and that's where new databases and all of those things. So with different gaming domain use a different technology based on that, and it's not traditional transactional database.
Okay.
Okay. So the next question that I have is like from a security perspective. I have seen like a lot of things like where they talk about SQL injection like from the front end, and security aspects are being implemented from the front end and from the back end. But are there some aspects where we as like you as the DB guy can implement security in your
Existing data.
Yeah. So it started. There are different layers that we break in, right? So we call it as authentication, authorization, then how you access and query your data. Like a simple tool is the one thing that I've learned, and I would say use bind variables. Bind variables. I think you might have heard a lot of time that help you avoid SQL injection kind of stuff. Don't use dynamic queries. So at a DBA, what or like I'm not a DBA primarily, but as a database person, what I'll try to do is like I'll understand who want to access my data, what are the level of the user that you want to access to it. Like for example, I can define a security where you cannot access more than 2 tables, or you cannot access, if I have 100 rows, you cannot access 30 rows, so you have your own row level security as well. So you can define your security at the row level as well. So I can define that policy for you that saying that if this user come, it cannot access this many rows or something like that, plus the table that you can do at the same time, what operation you can perform. So in databases, in any application, there are read user and write user. If you're meant to only read, I will not allow you to do writes based on your privilege. So your update delete will be not allowed. If you're meant to be doing writes, you're not allowed to do alter. What it means is that can you create new table or alter the data type of a column? That's a modification of table database structure, right? So you cannot do that. So there are rules that governs what operation you can perform. And in cloud, a lot more thing come into it. Like the port of databases, IP of database is not public. It's not over the internet. You don't open the port for everyone. It is open only for a network to access, or a machine to access. Nowadays, you can have a single sign-on login. You might be knowing it. You can do that for DB as well. You can have a single sign-on being operated on a database authentication also. So we call it as a Kerberos based authentication. Lots of things, right? So all of those help you to have a good security, not only on the access part, but also on the perimeter of who get into the database. Yeah, but as a developer, you see, security is a day zero job for everyone. So as a developer, you have to be cautious about not dynamically putting query, using bind variables, not having something which is directly hard coding the values, and all of those. So something that you have to be cautious about from. So every party is coming together and making the.
yeah,
Yes.
correct.
Uh-huh. So actually, when we are speaking about security, so in backend we do something known as abstraction. Like we create multiple backends and we chain the API call so that we cannot get directly to the like anybody cannot get directly to the main backend. Just chain the API and go to the backend which we are working on. So is there any implementation of database that we can apply abstraction on it?
So see, there are different layer of abstraction that you can build it. Like for example, if table has 100 column, but I don't want to expose any all of them, I'll create a view which only have 3 column. For you, the table only have 3 column. That's an abstraction, right? Because you don't have access to table, you have access to view. At the same time, the DML that you will do on view, I'll handle to make it happen for table. So that's a very simple example of abstraction. Like, and also some databases offers something else. Like initially, we used to have private function, public function concept, right? If a class want to expose a function, you will make it public, but you don't want to expose it to make it private. In databases, in the form of packages that Oracle offer, you can do it. Your spec should have public contracts, and your private contracts are within the package spec. No one knows it. So there are different level of abstraction that you can try. So the concept that database offers, it's vast, right? As we're talking about doing different things. So it's like based on your usage, I'll suggest that whenever you make any decision, next time try to understand how to make the same decision in front end, same decision back end, and same decision in database. You will find a solution for all three of them. Now your job become more tough on choosing what best. But ultimately, if you apply it at all the parties, it will make more secure, right?
This is like a question that I currently have. It's like the word in Hindi would be like वो खुराफती दिमाग होता है ना. The question is, can we access a different database from a different one?
Yes, you can.
Is it possible?
Is this possible? Yeah, yeah. So we call it as a federated access. So there's a concept called federated queries that are coming up nowadays.
Okay.
So your DB can spawn a new connection to a different databases and talk internally. We call it as FDW, foreign data wrappers. So yeah, it's possible. So what it means that and this we use in migration a lot. Like for example, if someone moved to Postgres and they still want to talk to Oracle or MySQL or SQL Server, they can still do it from database. But do we allow it? Answer is no, because allowing a database access directly from a database create a lot of security threat, because you have to open up the port for two database to talk to, but they are meant for within a private network, right? So in case both the parties are in a same network, private network, you can still do it. But the question is, see, if we can do it, yes, but should we do it? You have to always question it.
Okay.
But yeah, we can do it.
So you said about public and private contracts, right? Like, what is this contract?
So what it means that it's like, see, when I say contract, what I always say is that if you have a code logic in your database, the code logic will accept some parameters, will do some processing for you, and it will return it back for it. For me, it's a contract. It's a contract with packet or API.
Okay.
When I say private, it means that that private contract you cannot call it from outside. It will call within the databases. Like for example, if you have two code, one code is private, so you don't know that exists in databases. One is public. So you will call public, but public code can internally call that private logic. In that sense. So what it means that
Logic is contract.
logic, any call that you do to a database, you can call it as a contract.
Okay.
A query is also contract, because if you do a select star from employee, you're asking it to return a rows of employees. If you call a function or view, it is kind of, so it's a different technical term that you want to use. Or you can call it anything. I think it's basically, you can call it an API, database API also.
Okay. So it would be like any query that we put on, like as you said, select star from employee. It internally does it internally make an API call? Because at the end, what we are getting is a response.
Yeah. So see, internally it does a lot of checks. So and that's a very good question and very standard question in a way, that what happened when I submit a query, right? So whenever you submit a query, database job is to understand whether query is syntactically right. Then it does semantic checks. What it means that whether you as a user have rights to read from this table. It does check that. Whether the table that it is reading from exists and it has the rows that you should see it. Whether there is some hidden context. If no, then it will basically run those queries and return that rows back to you. So it does. And whenever it does any query, it has to internally also create something called as execution plan. So for outside world, there are n number of joins: left, righter, leftmost, rightmost, inner join, hash. Like you might have heard about all of those joins. But internally, database operate only three joins, which are nested, hash, and short merge. So any query that you do at the layer that you write a query, you can put any join, but in backend or in internals of it, it will do all either of this. And databases are very smart. Like for example, a very simple example I'll give you. Like for example, in a column, you have defined a constraint that the column should not have null, which means that it should always have a value. That's a constraint, which means let's assume a gender column. It should always have some value. It should not be empty, or it should not be null in database terms. Now, if you define that constraint as not null, and now you're writing a query like select star from that table where that column is null, you're querying against a constraint. Database will not run the query. It will return you 0 directly.
Okay.
So it will not waste time and wait, because it knows that constraint is there. I won't have any null. So it does that smart decision for you. It doesn't go and look at data, though you are writing a bad query. So it does a good job for you, right? In a way.
Okay. So does databases use data structures and algorithms in internally?
Internally, I'm pretty sure it used, yeah. So it's like, see, it's all it used to a large extent. Like for example, if I give you one more example, right? Now, let's assume you're working on an organization, and you both are very lucky that you both are the only male in that organization, and all remaining employees are female. And let's assume they have 10,000
We
employees.
hope sometime we will be in that kind of
And this example always works for me.
we were like, we had like small kind of smile on our face. We were like,
So I give this example because it gives you a perspective, right? So let's assume you have 1,000 employees, okay, and you are only 2 males and let's assume all other genders is female, okay. Now if I write a query, select star from employer where gender equal to male, only 2 rows are supposed to happen. Thus this scan should use index or not. And in most of the cases you will answer yes, because out of 1,000 I just need to return 2 record. Now let's change the query. I'll write select star from employee where gender equal to female. You're fetching 98% of the record. Now, should you do a full scan or index scan? You'll think about it, right? Now, the scenario given is same column, same table, but the condition is changing. Now, how the database should operate? Should it always follow the same pattern to fetch data, or should it use something? And that's where the stats come into picture. So database has stats around your table, testing, and all of those, and it uses those. So it understands the column has 2 distinct value. The distribution of first distinct is 0.02, the other is 0.98, and it will basically choose a plan according. And that's where algorithm and stats and all. So it uses a good mathematical stuff inside to get your query, even if it's
okay, that's great. One thing is let's say if someone wants to, it's like a very khurafati question. It's like I'm just thinking about what can be done, and the last 2 questions that I asked, you already told that it can be done. So the next question is, if let's say someone wants to create their own database, own type of database, like from SQL, NoSQL, they want to create something like not MySQL also exists. Then give me a good name for creating a database.
Creating a database.
Your database name. Any good name, anything.
Adda DB. I'll call it Adda DB.
Let's say if you want to create Adda DB. So what kind of tech stack should we use in that?
I think that's a very tough question for me as well, but I'll try to answer that. See, that will need a good understanding of how you're handling memories. That will be your memory handling. Also, how you interact with operating system file operation like fsync and all, how you're doing that. Because it's not only about building databases, but also interacting with OS for any technology. Like whenever we talk about databases, you have to do a lot of OS interaction. Because for example, for every table, you might create a file on local. For every data storage, you might do a blog or page write or all of those. For fetching data, you have to fetch from buffer. So I think the tech stack you have to be very good on Linux or administration or understanding of all the OS level kernels call, right? At the same time, in memory, there are a lot of mutex and latch and all of those you have to handle. Because internally databases, you have to handle a lot of contention. So you have to be well aware of those mutex latches that happen in the memory portion, because you have to secure some memory with some hashing and all. So all of those, I think it's a big technology, but I've seen some good, like I want to call out recently, there was a Dice DB, which was built by Indian folks, like Arpit Bayani is leading that development and lots of folks building. It's a replica for Redis and something like that. So if you want to understand all of those, I'll surely say go for that repo, see what they're doing, because I myself have not done it, but I know it's very tough. But at the same time, it requires a lot of understanding of OS, interacting with it, handling latches, breaches, and all of those contention problem that database has, because you have to guarantee 4 things, right? As we said, atomicity, consistency, isolation, and reliability, and also crash recovery and all of those.
Okay, I guess you are good at Linux, right? Let's start building the TV. Because he's like, when we talk, he's like, bro, Linux में सब कुछ है, तो Windows छोड़ दे, Windows में मजे नहीं है.
See, it's like front end वालों के लिए जो JavaScript है, it's like for anything you're building on OS is Linux.
Yeah, he's like, but Linux में जो मजा है, and every 3 days when we talk, he's like, and he shows something different. Because initially he used to
Linux is customizable anyway.
Yeah, initially he used to talk about like nano, like when we want to do anything, it's like there would be like nano.
Yeah.
And we would now he's like Vim. Now he's a Vim editor. Everything he edits is like
I have switched from VS Code everything to Vim and like this.
I'm like, bro, मेरे को VS Code से आगे नहीं बढ़ना है. This is good for me.
I'm in your team, man. I like it because whenever I show my terminal and show shortcuts and all the folks are amazed. But I think it helps you automate and save a lot of time.
Yes.
I don't like any UI based because they eat up a lot of time.
Yes.
So good, you're doing. So he's your
DB guy.
founder engineer for Adda founding engineer.
Yeah. My purpose was to like didn't want to use like मैंने meme देखा. I saw that meme कि core programmers don't use mouse. Okay. He took it very seriously.
And dark mode, they code in dark theme, not in light.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Lala.
Yeah, no, actually, after seeing that meme, I literally searched.
Not
about
using.
it. Literally searched and found out like there is something known as Linux. They use Vim. There is like many
Yeah,
editors.
and this meme got modified. Co-pilot is like, hold my beer.
Yes.
And when he used to talk, like recently when we had the Coding Adda meetup, when we went, he showed me a picture of the like Linus.
Linus driver.
Birthday, his birthday was there.
Yeah.
So he was like, bro, तेरे को पता है कौन है? Like नहीं, तेरे को नहीं पता. He was like, तू कैसे नहीं जानता इसको? कोई भी Linux का आगे का जब वर्जन आते हैं ये इसके अप्रूवल के बिना नहीं जाता. बोला नहीं पता मुझे. He's like, मैं बोला personally मत ले भाई. तू Linux कर रही
But that guy is the
Yes,
true alpha.
Yes.
इतना बहुत सिंगल बंदा रहेगा.
He's like different, very different. Because when he built Linux, there were Unix के basis पे he started building, but it's a very different.
Purpose was like he wanted his own
Yeah.
system for
See,
personal use.
if you just compare it, like Bill Gates built Terminal and a Mac DOS OS, but he built an open source at that time. अगर वो खुद he will have but earn a lot of money
Yes.
for it, right? But doing for community is a big thing, right? So
Actually,
it's an alpha man.
Yeah.
Yes.
So about database, not database, about learning. So basically, when I learn or do stuff, I have doubt, I go to GPT or any docs. Yeah. So how is AI influencing database?
So like see, learning in a way is, I myself use ChatGPT. Yeah, there's no harm in doing it. But point is, if you are on a stage where you understand what it is giving is right or wrong, you make that decision. Because nowadays what is happening is folks are blindly taking from ChatGPT, not doing their own research, right? And that's where is problematic. Because if you take something that is directly coming and you're not sure what is happening, it can impact you in a lot way. And whenever you put in databases, right? So in application might be happen that a single microservice is not functioning or an API is not working, but anything happen to database, your whole app is down. And that can impact, right? So with, as I said, with great power come great responsibility. So you have to always understand what you are learning and applying it. Learn from any platform that you're comfortable, but before applying, just be aware of consequences. So my always understanding is, what in databases there's one rule: before applying anything in production, test it in non-prod. So test your patch, test your stuff, and then apply it. And that not happen every time, but at the same time, be prepared for all the consequences, right? Because I myself have truncated a lot of time, deleted a lot of stuff. So I myself, but it's like learning. It's part of your learning, right? So till the time you're learning, you have good bosses. They're not firing you. You're fine.
That means we can truncate stuff. Yeah.
If you can regenerate it.
That's great. Any more questions?
हाँ अभी वो सोच रहा हूँ और कुछ तो था मेरे को पूछना था. Yeah. I recently came across Docker and containerization. So basically, in our second episode about APIs, we were talking about like load balancers and containers.
Correct.
So basically, what Kubernetes is doing is like automating stuff, like creating multiple containers on if a system is in a container or any application is in a container. If its limit is 100 users, it exceeds, then container is duplicated and load balance just
Balance it
distribute-
out between.
balance it.
Yeah.
So, like my question was, I am assuming it also happens in database,
Yeah.
but how same instances of multiple database, how they are communicating? Like,
So nowadays, lots of databases that are put on Kubernetes also. So we have operators for Postgres that you can deploy your databases on Kubernetes. And in databases, the technology has evolved a lot. Now there are a lot of any software to run, you need two basic things. One is compute and one is storage. Now the technology has advanced so much that you can scale both of them independently. Initially, they both were combined and you have to scale both together. Now with databases, you have a concept called as read replica, read pools, where you can always create a new compute instance that is meant for reading from the database. So you can load balance your reads. And if you have a multi-write kind of database, you can also scale up your writes. So basically, on a common storage, you can spin up multiple compute with different requirement as read or write. And there are lots of technology. Like for example, if I give you some example, Google Cloud has something called as AlloyDB on Postgres, which works on a common storage multi-compute architecture. Amazon has Amazon Aurora. Those are all of those. So there are lots of technology coming in as part of it, and it is advancing. That lots of folks are using for transactional databases, where you scale your load, but you don't scale the same machine. You add a new machine, but it depends on use case to use case. So in case you want to scale writes, you still have to use same thing. Nowadays, the technology has advanced that your databases also can be serverless. So it is there are new serverless technology, limitless. Lots of people are working on that as well. Neon is one of the big example, which is kind of a serverless. You can branch, as you were saying, if you truncate it, you can create a branch and you can come back to your older code in a fraction of a second. So I think if you want to explore, see how Neon is also working. It's a very good technology and also available for free trial to try it out. So it's sleep till the time you have it hit first connection and scale it automatically. It's like it's truly good. Yeah. So the same concept is now in our databases also. Like be serverless, limitless, or scaling, scale down, scale up, everything happens on the go without impacting current transaction. But again, everything has a limit and an environment in which they can function with. So if you're meeting all of those, you can for sure have it.
I have one more doubt. Like, if we have two instances, right? There are many data. Like, how that load balancer will understand कि your database your data is in second instance instead of first instance.
So there are different technology. Like for Abhi, just for example, whenever you have multiple instance, you have to have the copy of that data available in other instances as well in some format. So there are always internally data copy happening to maintain it. Like for example, if your one instance goes down, the second will still be up and serving it, right? You have to build for such scenarios as well. If you have two instances, if one goes down, the other should still serve the traffic. So internally what happened, it internally maintain a cache of the data of its own, copy of it. So your data get copied internally. You don't have to manage it, but it get copied internally. So that even if one machine goes down, the other one can have it. And there are lots of new technology that are doing that.
So basically, load balancer comes to first instance.
Yeah.
First instance.
So load balancer load balancer hit a common endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
From that common endpoint, based on your load balancer technology, is it a round robin, is it a regional, geographical, or it's a use case? Like for example, in database, you can load balance reads or writes. So if your input is read, it will go to reads. If it is write, it will go to write.
Okay.
So you have different technology to balance it. It's basically, we call it as a single endpoint to database, and the load balancer will decide where to send it.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Actually, I have heard one more thing. Like when it hits one first instance, the instance says that data is not with me. It's with 13th instance or
So it basically internally, so that communication that you're talking about, it doesn't go to load balancer. Load balancer's job is to send to one of the primary, and then primary will internally communicate wherever the data is and will bring it back for that.
Oh, okay.
So the load balancer just goes to a machine where it's supposed to go. Now that machine job is to get the data for it.
Okay, understood. So basically, there is a machine that is communicating
Internally, yeah. So
internally
see,
with
in
multiple
Kubernetes also, if you talk about ECD and all of those common, right, it basically helps to have a common like communication between the pods, right? If one pod goes on, someone need to know about and notify the other one. So in the database also, you can do that.
I guess after this conversation, Hari would be our DB guy because he has like a very much question. I am like, so itne questions aaka se rahe?
See, the person who is building something in the back end will have all of these questions.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just listening. I'm like, अच्छा, ठीक है, मेरे को भी podcast करना पड़ेगा.
Gain experience like Deepak bhai.
No, yeah, I'm good in narrating stuff, not good in building. Right? See, those who can do, they do. Those who can't, they teach. So I'm on the other.
So I guess we are teaching now.
So I'm the other.
I guess we'll truncate our conversation on this note.
Yeah. Before that, one last question. So you were talking about branching, right? Neon.
Yeah.
So actually, I wanted to ask this in our podcast, but my question is like we version control our code, like
Correct,
normal
correct.
code, any front end, back end, or
Anything. In databases, how does it work?
Yeah, so there are lots of concept, right? So in database also, or in any terminology, there's a green blue deployment. Green blue deployment. So what it means that, like for example, if you want to release a new API version, and you sometime you have to keep the older version also live for some time, and then let the new version throttle and connect to it, right? So, and for maintaining code, you can use something like Flyway, which is kind of a SQL code repo, and it has its own syntax where you can use it for deployment and all. And also blue green deployment help you to deploy anything into the database without impacting your live transaction, and gradually making it green for usage, something like that. So that's also a concept. And in database what happened is like whenever we need to do some changes on anything, the simple rule is create a replica, do everything on that, and gradually it will replace the primary, and but the end user will not do it. But everything come with cost, right? So the every technology. So I'll suggest for deployment or repository, look for Flyway. So it's a kind of an open. I'm not sure 100% open source, but it helps you to maintain your code in kind of a repo form. And then if you want to look for a deployment or branching and all, look for blue green, and look for branching technology in Neon, how they are doing it. There's lots more stuff. Like it's more interesting when you read about.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, that's
Finally,
it
we can
for now.
truncate the video. And
I have seen first time truncate got rolled by.
our database got branched out, and this became the main one.
Sure.
It's like the first time I'm knowing about developer jokes in real life, because it's like we have been just scrolling it on Instagram, and it's like these kind of conversation we really wanted in like a college times, like developer jokes.
Yeah.
But it was like they're like kya bol rahe ho?" They
There
would
were jokes happening in real time.
yeah, and they would not understand like what is this? They're like क्या बोल रहे हो? यहाँ latency भी कम है ना, like फटाक से मिल रहा है, bandwidth भी जल्दी है.
Same note.
So yeah, it was a great conversation
Same,
talking
yes.
about DB.
Cool.
And I guess a lot of questions are answered from your point. And
I tried to
our
answer
question, our
Yeah,
question.
you definitely did.
And I guess Hari would be now in charge of everything. See guys, I'm just quoting it. Everything that will be done on database on our Coding Adda platform will be done by this guy. So,
Even I have some doubt. I'll come to it.
so Hari, you have a huge responsibility right
Oh
now.
man, this much responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So be
I
ready.
think
for
I've done
everything.
my handover. Katie, then.
KT session is done right now. Now you'll be into the production part.
That's how transition happened. And that's how I became DB for it. It's an accidental DB.
Accident.
A lot. If you are a developer, you'll get these jokes.
Yes.
Otherwise, you won't get. You'll be like, क्या हो रहा है?
क्या हो रहा है?
ऐसे ही हंस रहे. But yeah, thank you Deepak for hopping in and hopping on the podcast as well, and for the Dev Exchange video as well.
Yes, no worries.
All
the
because
best for
Thank you
your
so
channel.
much. For
Thank
solving my
you.
doubts
Thank you
also.
so much. It was lovely talking to you,
Same
and
here.
thank you for taking out your time.
Yes. I
And
also had a good
we'll just do the outro part, please, sir. Do the outro. Yeah. He's
So
this
basically,
guy is very
in our
good. at-
channel, जो outro खराब करे तो मैं हूँ.
So he's like, Hari would be like, नहीं तू ही बता.
Outro आधा
Chat
video
GPT,
है.
please summarize.
It's not नहीं summary नहीं.
It's
Outro
just
में
a single line of
yes, हर बार
single
भूल
line.
जाता हूँ.
He's
Okay.
like, भाई इसके बाद क्या बोलना है? हम लाइक नहीं अभी तू ही बोल. मैं edit कुछ नहीं कर. मैं पिछले वाले में भी जैसे बोला है मैंने वैसे रखा. मैंने edit कुछ नहीं किया.
So guys, in this video we talked a lot about databases and my doubts. So yeah, if you like this video, please do share with your friends, family members and any experienced person. And comments आपका ये please कर दो comment, कुछ भी doubt है तो LinkedIn profile मिल जाएगा. And मिलते हैं अगले वीडियो में.
सब्सक्राइब करना ही मत गाइस. नहीं सब्सक्राइब करना ही मत. ये सब करके बैठो गाइस. सब्सक्राइब ही करना मत.
सब्सक्राइब जरूर करना.
हाँ, उसके बिना फिर आगे के अपडेट्स नहीं आएंगे यार आपको.
हाँ वही. तो मिलते हैं अगले साल.
अगले साल मतलब फ्राइडे मिलेंगे.
हाँ.
फ्राइडे क्या डेट है? 4 तारीख.
हाँ,
4 तारीख को मिलते हैं.
Yes, मिलते हैं अगले साल.
Until then, bye bye.